Welcome to this week's reading of Ghost in the Machine, the second book in the Skeleton Creek series. I'm really sorry our live meeting didn't work out. My internet just stopped working hard enough to run a video chat. Everybody was frozen. Nobody could hear what I was saying. It was super sad. So I'm just recording this week, and hopefully we can get the live chat to work again next week. Wednesday, September 22nd, 2:19 p.m. Okay, the past hour has been a whirlwind, but I'll try to explain fast. I couldn't go back to the cafe, or I'm sure that waitress would have been like, "What is your problem?" I can't take that kind of stress right now. So I'm sitting at the station house, not under the station house with the blue rock, but on the steps leading up to the door that's never unlocked. I wonder what's in there. Scatterbrain. I need someone to slap me so I can calm down. So here's what happened in the past hour. I packed my stuff up and left the cafe. I've never walked around in our tiny hanging-on-for-its-life downtown with so much anxiety. I've never worried about who might be watching me. My dad could be right around the corner. Daryl Bonner might be staring out from behind a window. Gladys Morgan could come out at any moment and point her shotgun at me. And that Dr. Watts guy, he might have binoculars trained on me. Call some thug on his phone, and they'd find me wrapped around a tree in the creek tomorrow morning. I turned down a side street as soon as I was outside the cafe and walked away from the library, toward the woods. There are woods all around Skeleton Creek, but the cafe was on the side of the street opposite the big mountains. I glanced up at them and saw how small the library was in their monstrous shadow. All those books don't add up to a hill of beans against one big mountain. I turned down a side alley and couldn't stop thinking about a pile of books, like every book ever printed, and I wondered if all of those books would be as big as the one mountain. Makes a guy wonder about who made mountains and why they were made so big. So all these thoughts were running through my head, which kept me from being too nervous at the thought of turning a corner into my dad or Ranger Bonner or Gladys ready to slap me across the face with a copy of War and Peace or Lord of the Rings. Before I knew it, I was walking past the library, glancing up at the Black Crow as my throat tightened. It was a very quick glance, like reading a clock and going back to my homework, but that was all the time I needed to see that my dad had changed the time. A straight shot to Martha's at 10 past the knob. A straight shot to Martha's at 10 past the knob. I kept repeating those words because I'd memorized them from the alchemist diagram of 79. Before I knew how I even got there, I was across the street, down a block, and sitting on the curb, shaking uncontrollably. I thought about the mountain of books and my body not growing. I breathed the mountain air in and out until I felt a little better. It dawned on me then that I should keep watching from where I sat. No one had seen me, or at least if they had, they hadn't stopped me. Maybe something else would happen. I stood and peeked around the corner onto Main Street. I sort of leaned on the brick building like I was playing it cool in case anyone walked past. I waited. 5 minutes went by. 1:51. 5 more minutes passed. 1:56. People walked by the library, but no one appeared to look at the crow. No one went inside the library. It just sat there until 1:58, when Gladys Morgan opened the door and came outside. She stood there a moment, looking up and down Main Street. Then she looked at me. I didn't move, and it wasn't because I wanted her to see me. I just couldn't move. She stared right at me, and I half expected to hear her whisper, "Don't make me come looking for you." But she acted like she hadn't seen me at all. Gladys is ancient, so I was likely nothing more than a cataract-induced blob next to a fuzzy building. Still, it was creepy the way she stopped and held her gaze right where I was standing, like she knew someone was hiding just outside her ability to see. Gladys turned around, looked at the Black Crow, and went back into the library. 2 p.m. I lingered. I don't even know for sure why. It wasn't like I had it all figured out or anything, but something told me to stay. This little dance wasn't done yet. At 2:03 p.m., my dad came back. He walked casually up the sidewalk and jumped the 2 steps to the library door. He didn't see me. I watched him reach up and move the crow, and when he did, I realized he was doing the job the apostle had once done. The apostle will see you now. Could my dad have written those words? If he did, he's crazy. Meet my dad, escapee from the nut house. Or was it worse than crazy? Was it deadly? No, I couldn't think about that. He would have been just a kid when Joe Bush died. A kid like me. I walked to the Blue Rock so I could leave a note for Sarah. Now here I sit, with the sun beating down on my head. Stress makes you do things you shouldn't. It's that whole fight or flight thing. I worked my leg way too hard today without even realizing I was doing it. It didn't hurt then, but it hurts a lot now. I hope I haven't re-injured it. I'm not looking forward to the long walk back home. The lies I'll have to tell about what I've been doing all day. The questions about the shirt I didn't buy with the money my dad gave me. But wait, who's the real liar here? My dad moved the signal, then moved it back. Everyone in the Crossbones knew they were supposed to look between 1 p.m. and 2 p.m. on Wednesday. Maybe they've been looking for years. Who knows? Probably it's all part of some elaborate system. The crow moves the first time, and everyone knows it will move again at 1 p.m. The next day? Could be. That would make sense, because my dad is gone all day every day, but Dr. Watts and Gladys, they're right here. Maybe Dr. Watts goes to his top window every day, points his binoculars at the library, and then goes back to whatever it is he does in that old house of his. All Gladys Morgan has to do is glance out the door she steps through every day. Sarah, you're going to have to move fast. Crossbones is meeting below Longhorns at 12:10 tonight. I can't walk out here again. My leg is killing me. You'll have to email me, but my guess is they'll be watching even closer. Send me a note at exactly 9 p.m. and let me know if you need me to do anything. I'll turn in early, tell them I'm tired and not feeling well, and maybe they'll leave me alone. At least I know my dad won't be home tonight. My best guess about who you're going to see at this secret meeting? Dr. Watts, my dad, Gladys Morgan, and maybe Darrell Bonner. Everyone else who might have shown up is already dead. Ryan. Wednesday, September 22nd, 5:05 p.m. Sarah is going to email me in a few hours, but right now I'm sitting on the front porch trying to play it cool. The old couch is getting some holes, but it's the most comfortable place to rest outside my own room. I hope my mom doesn't move it to the yard and try to sell it. Dad and Henry are still at the creek fishing, which doesn't surprise me. Some of the best bugs come out in the late afternoon and early evening. They might not be back until 7 or 8, especially if they're trying to avoid another dinner like last night. I've had the house to myself all afternoon, and Mom won't be home for another hour. I brought my laptop downstairs at 3, and for the past 2 hours, I've been digging around. 3 cans of Coke later, I've found some amazing stuff. I've decided that I'm obsessed with Robert Boyle, Robert Hooke, and Sir Isaac Newton. As far as I'm concerned, these guys were rock stars. I can see how a secret society would be interested in them. Who doesn't love a mad scientist? But after the research I did today, I think I'm starting to see a bigger reason why the members of the Crossbones have been interested in Boyle, Hooke, and Newton. A brief history of these 3 people is worth writing down. First, Hooke, Robert Hooke. Many historians believe Hooke was the first person to use the word cell in relation to biology. That alone makes him larger than life. Imagine being the first person to use the word pizza, or football, or movie. Those are nothing compared to the word for the building block of all life as we know it, including pizza, footballs, and movies. Impressive. Robert Hooke did all these experiments with air pumps and springs and elastic, a bunch of really great stuff. A lot of people give Hooke credit for inventing the balance spring, which is what makes small timepieces possible. He theorized correctly about combustion, decades before anyone else understood it. He invented barometers, optical devices, microscopes, and universal joints. Hooke was one of the first people to accurately measure weather, to see objects too tiny for the naked eye, and surely huge parts of London so it could be rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1666. He also figured out some very important stuff about elasticity, but I have to admit, I don't really understand it. One of Sir Isaac Newton's most famous lines was actually in a letter he wrote to Robert Hooke. "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." So that's what Sir Isaac Newton, the discoverer of gravity, thought of Hooke. Not bad. Sir Isaac Newton is even more important than I realize. Sure, I knew he was impressive, but I could have spent all day researching the things he invented and discovered, and not even scratched the surface. From gravity to planetary movements, from calculus to how light works, Newton was at the forefront of so many groundbreaking discoveries it's no wonder he's known as the father of science. And then there was the last of the 3, Robert Boyle, who turns out to be the most interesting. Let's start with his hair. The guy had guts to go out on the streets of London looking like that. Wow, plenty of wigs to choose from at the wig shop, and he chose the biggest of the bunch. Robert Boyle was a scientist with devout religious beliefs. After reading up on him, I think this was one of the key things that made Boyle unique. It's not that other notable scientists of his time had no faith, it's just that Boyle was a Christian first and a scientist second. The fact that he was highly successful at both made him a powerful figure of the times. He admired God's workmanship and saw the study of natural science as a form of worship. The only way, in his view, to discover the world God made was to investigate it. This seems like a sound idea to me. As far as I can tell, he was a little bit of a nutty professor. Just about everything Boyle ever wrote was short on organization and long on ideas. I imagine if he'd had a car, the keys would have gone missing all the time. He was constantly refuting the ideas of other chemists and scientists, and although he was often right, this might have had the effect of making him seem like a know-it-all to some people. He was outrageously wealthy, primarily because his father was one of the richest men in Ireland. His title, I'm not making this up, was the Great Earl of Cork. But I don't think he made corks or pluggers or bottle caps. He lived in Cork, which I guess is a place in Ireland. Anyway, this meant Boyle could afford to hire assistants, including Robert Hooke. Yes, that Robert Hooke, to work for him. It was Boyle's idea to explore gases and pumps, but Hooke did many of the hands-on experiments. Many people regard Robert Boyle as the most important chemist of his time, which makes the fact that he was an alchemist all the more interesting. You heard me right. Robert Boyle, the Robert Boyle, was a closet alchemist. And not just a hobby alchemist, he was fairly obsessed with it. Apparently, Sir Isaac Newton also thought a lot about alchemy, but it was Boyle who appears to have been at the forefront of this very subjective science. And while it's harder to find references to Robert Hooke in alchemy, something tells me all three of them were secretly working in this area together. Alchemy, I'm starting to learn, was then and continues to be today a controversial offshoot of real chemistry. During Boyle's time, it was viewed as voodoo chemistry, where chemicals and metals were brought together in strange ways to accomplish outlandish things. It was not serious science. And here we come to the most interesting thing of all, the thing that makes the appearance of their names in the crossbones make all the sense in the world. Robert Boyle wrote a secret paper that didn't surface until long after his death. It was never meant to be published, but it was. This is what the paper was called: An Historical Account of a Degradation of Gold Made by an Anti-Elixir. If you believe the secret paper by Boyle, he was very close to figuring something out, something remarkable and kind of scary for what it could mean. Robert Boyle was very close to finding a way to turn gold into something else. Imagine if you could change the properties of gold so it wasn't gold anymore, and then change it back again. Imagine. What if you worked on a gold dredge and had a way to hide gold or change gold, then change it back? It can't be possible, can it? Could Boyle and Hooke and Newton have secretly figured this out, but told no one? What if the secret is out there and someone from my little town figured it out? A process like that sure would come in handy on a gold dredge. It might start to answer why so many members of the Crossbones ended up dead, and why at least one of the dead doesn't want to leave the dredge.